Welcome to the Massage Hodge podcast. My name is Nick Paterka, a licensed massage therapist in Portland, Oregon. I am joined today by Gretchen Hannsz Witzgall, a fellow licensed massage therapist in the state of Maryland. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Nick. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here. And you are here
honored.
in my that's tremendous. Part of the ongoing series to interview a fellow massage therapist from all 50 states. I'm just chugging right along over here.
Getting through the East Coast.
One state at a time, yeah. I might have to ask you later for some references from neighbors. There's some states I'm missing over there.
Absolutely.
Quite frankly, I'm missing most states everywhere. So I don't even think I haven't even hit halfway yet, but I'm getting there. So to start, usually before we go into the state of Maryland, if you could give me a little origin story as to how you became a massage therapist in the first place.
Absolutely. It's kind of convoluted and long, so I'll try to make it as short as possible. I graduated with my degree in language and literature, basically English literature, from St. Mary's College of Maryland. I always knew that I loved to write, and I thought I'd be a writer. I also want to include the fact that I was a very cerebral person. I basically lived from the shoulders up in my head. And I started getting involved in sports in high school, and I was horrible. Like, I tried to play soccer. It was awful, but I still tried. Tennis, I was mediocre. But I loved the act of getting in my body. And I think that was my first experience of really living fully in my body. So I kept on going with that and ended up helping start the rowing team down at St. Mary's College of Maryland. And that was my sport. So I did that for a while. We could only afford a 4-man shell. So there were like 55 people that always wanted to row. And then my college got a 50-foot sailboat and wanted to put together a group of people that had sailed before, but never raced. And I got right in line for that possibility. And that's when I really feel like it informed a lot of what I do with bodywork, actually. Sailing and bodywork are very similar in terms of kinesthetics and just following your intuition. And there's a lot of similarities. And that also led to why I named my most recent business Leading Light. And I'll go into that further. But so I graduated with this English Lit degree, and things did not pan out the way I thought they would. I taught sailing when I was first out of school, proceeded to sell shoes at Nordstrom, which was interesting, and I learned a lot about customer service there. I managed a dental office. And during that time, I went to career counseling at James Madison University in Virginia, and I just knew there was something out there for me that I would find more rewarding, but I just couldn't seem to put my finger on it. The irony during all of this is that my maiden name is Hannsz. Hannsz. It's not spelled hands, but, and so it was right there in front of me the whole time. Anyway, I went to work for a database company in Massachusetts after my husband was relocated. And 2 years in, I was doing really well. Even without a technical background, I was learning. I was basically technical support and learning consulting and really loving database management. I was working at a library automation database company. But I was stressed out, and I was commuting anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. If it was snowing, sometimes it was a 3-hour commute home in the snow. I was getting up at 4 a.m. to catch airplanes, and I started getting really bad migraines. So I ended up putting my career on hold with that, which was really hard. But these migraines were very debilitating, like ocular, losing my peripheral vision at times, and they run in my family. So I had to have an MRI, and I went to my neurologist. He did the MRI. He found something on it that I won't get into the details of, other than to say it was a little disconcerting. He said, "Don't worry about it. It's not affecting you. You don't need to worry about it." Well, I got home, and at this point, it was 2002. There was no Google. It was only Yahoo. So I'm in my little search engine after I ate my lunch, searching on this little malformation of the fourth ventricle that he diagnosed. And I found craniosacral therapy. I found all these kids that were really suffering, that had a worse situation than I did. It actually could lead to spina bifida. and children and babies being born with hydrocephalus. And I just really got interested in their story and how craniosacral therapy was helping them. So then I thought, God, I think I'd really like to pursue craniosacral therapy. And you have to be either a nurse, a physician, or you could be a massage therapist. So I knew I was working in a health food store. And so I just kept doing my research. And it turned out my husband was going to be relocated to North Carolina. And I found Body Therapy Institute. And I could tell just from talking with them on the phone and looking at their website that it was a great match for me.
Oh, cool.
And I thought, well, I'm going to go to massage therapy school. I don't really think I want to be a massage therapist. I want to be a craniosacral therapist, but I'm going to pursue it and see where it leads. And I fell in love with massage. At BTI, basically the deep tissue work that we work with was myofascial release. And I just fell in love with all of it. So that's how I got there.
Wow.
And I haven't looked back. And I was 36 years old when I got licensed. I went to school when I was 35. Yeah. Cool.
And you still row?
I have not been rowing recently, but actually I celebrated my 50th birthday on April 20th. Thank you. And I thought, I really want to get an individual rowing shell. I've yet to learn how to set a boat by myself. In other words, keep it balanced so I don't flip over while I'm rowing. And the river's right 3 doors down. So
I'm slightly afraid of the water. So I row on a machine. That's about all I can handle.
Oh yeah, the ergometer. That's great. I have an ergometer. So I do occasionally get on the ergometer. I need to start doing it. But yeah.
Cool. Well, that's an interesting story. Quite a path.
Yeah, it was an interesting path.
It's not uncommon to see in massage therapy. I remember being in school and there being quite a few people who seem to have found it as a second or even third career.
Me too. Yeah, that was a wide circle of people in my class 46, BTI. A lot of them, there were a few young people that were just starting with their first career, but the majority had been nurses or in some other profession.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump over to Maryland.
Maryland. I made some notes.
Yeah, okay, good. What does it take to become a massage therapist in the state of Maryland and to maintain a license there?
Well, first of all, the state of Maryland is my home state. So when I moved back, I was very excited about becoming licensed in Maryland. I had been licensed in North Carolina, and North Carolina was easy in terms of it was a very well put together board. It was very clear, concise. It was just a different situation. You had to be, at the time, we still had to be fingerprinted, which was very odd to have to go to the police station when, I had a real idealistic vision of what massage therapy is. I do, therapeutic work. Why am I being fingerprinted? But anyway, fast forward to moving to Maryland. Maryland has pretty stringent guidelines, which I think can be good. But it is tiered. So the requirements are such that you can either be a registered massage therapist or a licensed massage therapist.
Okay.
And recently, having just gone up to the site in the last few days just to kind of go back over the requirements to make sure I didn't miss anything, they're now referring to CMT, which I believe I believe what they're referring to is LMTs. But they're calling them CMTs, and that stands for Certified Massage Therapist, possibly? No, it's Certified Massage Technician, I think.
Oh.
Okay, so here's the deal. Registered massage therapists have to have 600 hours of the diploma program in massage therapy. That is it. They need to pass the MBLEX. It used to be the national board test, which is what I took in 2006. But now it's the MBLEX. And they are permitted to practice in spas and non-medical settings.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Licensed massage therapists have to have the 600 hours of the diploma program. But in addition, they need to have 60 hours of college credits. And of those 60 hours of college credits, 24 of them need to be in applied health or sciences.
Okay.
So that is the distinction there. And with the LMT license, you can not only work in the same settings that the RMTs can, but you also are able to work in medical settings such as hospitals, chiropractic offices, physical therapy offices, those type of settings.
Does it also inherently expand your scope of practice, like the type of work that you do?
Well, what's interesting, Nick, that, it's interesting you would ask that. I just posted something today on the MTA Facebook page, because what all of this is, the recent challenges, which I'm sure we'll launch into later regarding COVID-19. What's interesting is there is nowhere on the site of Maryland. This, I wanted to mention too, that we are, basically the Maryland State Board of Health is our overriding board that looks after our licensure. They do not indicate that by RMTs, if you're an RMT, that you can't practice medical massage. And I think that's a distinction that needs to be more clear, because in my mind, you could have an RMT who's practicing, who goes back to get their continuing education credits, and our continuing education credits, it's 24 continuing ed units per every 2 years that we have to have. And we can talk about specifically what those are. But what if you have an RMT who's had 200 hours of medical massage that they've decided to pursue on their own 2-3 years out of school? And their technique might be just as good as an LMT, and in some cases better. Maybe an LMT hasn't had that many hours. So in answering your question, but taking the long way around, to me, it doesn't make much sense. And it isn't, I realize they're a governing board and they have to do their best at overarching, not being super specific with each individual, but I think there's some room for interpretation there that needs to be defined.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, of all the states, I think I'm about 15 or so in now. Maryland wins the most complicated award thus far.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it's not cheap either. And not that it should be inexpensive, but I was told at one point we were paying more as licensed massage therapists and registered massage therapists in the state of Maryland as nurses.
Oh.
And to me, typically a nurse is going to make more money than a massage therapist. So I don't know. I feel there's an opportunity for a little bit more fleshing out of that with the board, and trying to maybe make it a little, I think if someone is an RMT, do they need to go back and get their 4-year diploma? I don't know. I think there needs to be some type of provision for people that decide to go back with continuing ed. For instance, when I was first out of school, I went to a 650-hour diploma program. And within the first 2 years of being out of school, I took over 240 continuing ed units, because I had specific interests like craniosacral therapy and lymphatic drainage that I wanted to take. And I knew that I wanted more. I needed more information. I needed more experience. I needed more training, in my opinion. I wanted more. So there needs to be a provision for people that, like me, that invest the time and money to do that. We should be able to.
Does this make reciprocity in Maryland particularly challenging? All this sort of complicated.
Yes, I believe it does.
Or are they open to it? Yeah.
Well, I believe, there's reciprocity. You have to go through the channels I just mentioned.
Yeah.
For me, I literally was 6 months out from, it's a 2-year window, as I said, like most states, but they don't prorate. So I could have paid let's see, and I also wrote down how much it costs. The application fee is $150. The licensure fee is $200. The state examination fee is $275 now. And if I'm not mistaken, I had to take a jurisprudence exam when I got here, despite the fact I had my national board certification and always had, continuing ed credits every 2 years and every 2 for my national board.
Kind of makes you wonder what that national board certification really does for you.
Well, yeah, I know. But you do have to have your ethics. And so, I felt like I was coming in and taking the jurisprudence exam, which I would love to tell you about. I don't know if we have time because it's pretty amusing. Let's see, the reexamination fee, if you don't pass the jurisprudence the first time, is $300. Sorry, that was my cat jumping off the table.
Quite all right.
There's a biannual renewal fee. When you renew, it's $250. And then you have to have a background check for $32.75. So with that said, I would have had to pay my application fee, my licensure fee, and my jurisprudence exam fee, which I don't believe at the time was $275. I think it was $225 when I took it, if I'm not mistaken, but it was over $500. And then they said, but in 6 months, you're going to have to do your biannual renewal at another $250. And I said, well, no, thank you. I'm going to wait that 6 months. So I lost 6 months of practice and ended up getting a different job for a little while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, now I just have to know what was entertaining about the jurisprudence situation.
So I drove all the way to Baltimore from Annapolis, where I was living at the time. And I was in a room of about 150 other people. And the gentleman who was proctoring the exam was a retired police officer.
Okay.
And he proceeded to give us a sermon about how if we were practicing basically, practicing and not doing therapeutic work, doing something other unmentionable in our interview, that he just was he was bullying us. And, I understand, for me, I'm such an idealist too, because, this work is so sacred to me. It's so sacred to me. It's so heart-centered and just, it's sacred work. And so just the irony of sitting in that room and being treated that way and feeling like, wow, this is so out of the realm of what I do.
Yeah.
It felt so strange. And I remember being in that room looking around at other people's reactions. And I locked eyes with this one other woman on the other side of the room. And she just looked at me and her eyes were so wide. And we were both just like, but I do understand that, the reality is there are people that are illegally practicing prostitution under the guise of
human trafficking is a real situation.
Exactly. And so I understand that now. And now I understand why that gentleman, the proctor, had to give the speech. And that is the reality. And I haven't been on the other side of sitting on the board. I don't know what comes through their, through their desk and through the door. So,
yeah.
So, but it was a really interesting situation.
Yeah. They probably see a lot of it, so they're more attuned to it and frustrated by it than maybe we are in our practices, where we may rarely, if ever, encounter such suggestions or questions about that. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the rundown. And basically, just to give you the breakdown on CEUs, and this is one thing that Maryland has done because of COVID. It seems that they have presently, it used to be we'd have to have 24 hours every two years of continuing ed credits. 3 of those CEUs had to be in ethics and jurisprudence. 3 of the other CEUs had to be in communicable diseases, including HIV/AIDS. 1 CEU needed to be in cultural diversity. And then we have to have our provider level certification for CPR. But they have now waived all 17 of the 24 units because of COVID-19. They're trying to make it a little easier on people. So only 7 units are required, the very basic of the ethics, the communicable diseases, and the cultural diversity for the next round in October, and the CPR.
Okay, so Maryland's got an interesting licensing situation over there.
They do, and you ask about reciprocity, and I do know of one person I've been personally in touch with who was moving here, and she's traveling some in her life, and basically made the decision. She's been an LMT working in medical settings in the past, and they told her, no, you have your bachelor's, but you don't have any of your credits in allied health or sciences, and we can't give you the LMT status. You would be RMT, and she chose to just say, well, then I'm not going to practice here.
Oh,
So,
well, there you go.
yeah.
That's too bad, because that probably keeps a really talented practitioner from helping the population there.
Yes, and she is very talented. I mean, I haven't had her work personally, but I can tell from her presence online.
Yeah.
And
so we alluded to it a few times. Tell me how COVID sort of unraveled from your perspective, and what Maryland did about it, and where it's at now.
okay.
And that's no small question.
It's not a small question at all. It's heartbreaking on so many levels. And I will say that I've been participating on multiple boards in terms of communication boards on Facebook with other practitioners. Also, I subscribe to a professional group online that has been amazing in keeping people. We have Zoom meetings twice a week. It's really helped all of us come together and be a think tank, and also just emotional support for each other, because I'll just say this before we get into the nuts and bolts of COVID and what it's done. Like I said, this work is it can be very heart-centered. I'm a manual therapist. I've taken classes with Tom Myers in structural integration. I love myofascial release, but I've managed to take a little bit of all of my training. And, I'm not certified yet in structural integration, so I don't practice the full protocol, but he taught me a lot of really good ways to look at people's bodies and the way they move and understand how they work, the muscles work together, and craniosacral therapy, especially with Michael Shea, who is just one of my, I just love him as a practitioner. That's all heart-centered and energetic, as well as, working with the cerebral spinal fluid. My point being is that it's really tough. It's tough for other business owners who have brick and mortar stores and have 25 years in, running a store, and they have their own story. But our story as hands-on practitioners is that we help people deal with stress and anxiety every day when we're working with them. We touch their nervous systems, we touch their musculature, we ease their pain, we help. And I really, I am not one to tout myself as a healer. I tout myself as a facilitator. This work to me, and on my business card, if I may.
Please.
That's my business card.
Leading light. You should read it, though, in case someone's just listening.
Yeah. Okay. So that it says on my card, awakening awareness and healing potential through informed touch.
Yeah.
And, I would say my focus and my awareness whenever someone comes through my door, before we ever work hands-on, is the awareness around the actual session, and the awareness around the fact that we all have healing potential in our bodies, and our bodies are super intelligent beings. And it is my job to facilitate that body to find that healing space within them. So for those of us that work in that way, when we are walking around dealing with, we're stuck inside, we're dealing with COVID-19, knowing people are in fear. They may be sick, they're in pain, they're definitely seizing up because they're not moving fluidly. We want to help, we're helpers. And so it's a whole nother level of loss when you have to close your practice. And I've heard other practitioners talking about how they feel like they're abandoning their clients. I felt a little bit about that, but I also have very clear boundary, like my boundary. I have pretty strong boundaries. I've had to work to do that. This work requires that you have strong boundaries. And my hope is that with my clients that I've seen, and I've posted this on my professional Facebook page, is that they'll be able to access that very quiet center that we access in the work every time we work together. Yeah. But it's been heartbreaking, and it's not just the loss of your business, your income, your loved work, your career, but it's that it's that relationship you have with your clients and that facilitation of those amazing sessions. It's really hard on so many levels.
Yeah, I don't think the typical client, someone in the general public, is really aware of how much their practitioner gets out of the sessions. It can be very centering and grounding and energizing to work on people. And to miss out on that as the therapist is kind of insult to injury for not being able to work and provide for yourself and your family.
Absolutely. There's just so many layers to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of brings me around to what I didn't mention in my origin story, is that with this work, I finally found, like, I don't do well sitting at a desk all day.
Mm-hmm.
And the work is because you're channeling, you're basically, I mean, at least when I work, I'm channeling energy. I'm opening up I'm grounding and centering before I make contact. And I can feel the energy moving through me from out there. And it can be very, very energizing, and just the flow of it and being in a meditative state. It's amazing.
So did Maryland officially close the state? Have they reopened the state?
We are in the process of reopening. As of May 13th, they were letting public, what they called political subdivisions, meaning local entities like county, city, I think county, determine local spaces being open. So parks, outdoor places. But they had to comply with social distancing and the guidelines of the Maryland Public Health Department and the CDC. Certain personal services on May 13th were open, hair salons, but they were all required to be wearing masks. They were over the age of 2, and only 50% occupancy for those places. Mm-hmm. Outdoor recreation and boating, which was really big in Maryland. There were a lot of people and boaters that were really frustrated because you could only boat if you were going to go fishing for your dinner.
Okay.
And people were not happy. Boating is a big deal around here. So with the May 13th reopening stage 1, there was an interesting, this is when it gets interesting with Maryland licensure and LMTs versus RMTs.
Oh, I see.
Here we go. It was statute, or whatever you would call it, number 4. G, other miscellaneous establishments is what we fall under. Massage parlors. Okay, so first of all, number 3, massage parlors, that stuff needs to stop.
Yeah.
Like, after all this settles down and our governor has a little extra time on his hands, and the Maryland Department of Health, I'll be writing some letters. I know they're a little busy right now, but I refuse that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were allowed to open retail establishment. I'm sorry, they were not allowed to open yet. May 15th, other retail establishments were allowed to open 50%, churches 50%. So in 2 days, they went from local public spaces and outdoor recreation, and then 2 days later, they were opening retail establishments. But the massage parlors were not one of them. Now, on the 19th, which was just a few days ago, the Secretary of Health went ahead and said that elective and non-urgent medical care could resume. So we haven't been able to have anything. All of our doctors were not permitted, like dermatologists, anything that was not non-emergency or absolutely, if it was elective surgery, it couldn't happen.
Okay.
So the Secretary of Health went ahead with opening all of that. However, they refer to all licensed medical practitioners. And apparently, LMTs are considered licensed medical practitioners. So LMTs in healthcare settings such as hospitals and physical therapy offices and chiropractic offices and my wellness center for that, where I was renting prior, I could practice. I have a problem with that. And I have multiple issues with this. And, other than the fact COVID is so misunderstood, there are no statistics there are no clear statistics on what type of risks you're taking in that treatment room. It's impossible to social distance in a treatment room.
Yeah.
A lot of these treatment rooms are very small, and usually, quite typically, the amount of air circulation is not good. And then PPE. So we really should be practicing in PPE, just like another healthcare physician or nurse would. The risk is no less, it's no less really than in a doctor's office. Well, PPE is not really readily available yet. Getting your hands on cleaning supplies that you need is not necessarily easy. So there's a lot of considerations, and I feel personally as if after reading that declaration that it wasn't clearly being stated in terms of massage therapy, but the Maryland Board of Health has posted it as, there's a highlighted area on the massage therapy boards, part of the internet that is.
And you're observing people reopening?
No, I haven't, I don't know anyone personally. There have been a few people on the local boards that are contemplating it. I would say the vast majority of the people that I have been in contact with aren't.
Yeah.
But
what do you feel like what would make you comfortable? When do you feel like, what do you need to see for yourself to go back to work?
Well, that's a great question and a really long one. Realistically, I do not see myself going back to work until November, December, maybe next January.
Wow.
I have an interesting perspective in that while I don't have an education in public health, I have had health issues in the past that have warranted that I do a lot of research on my own. I had chronic Lyme disease and 2 tick-borne infections, co-infections, that left me they left me debilitated to the point where I could not function for 6 months, other than to go to the doctor and beg that they figure out what was wrong with me. If I did not do my research, I probably would have been diagnosed with MS, because that's where the testing was going. And the testing for Lyme disease in this country, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, and I don't want to make this about that, but I will tell you, the research I've done in terms of the CDC and how they test for Lyme disease in this country is not okay. They test for 1 strain, and the testing is horrible. So my point is this: I know enough about infectious disease. I know enough about testing and how bad it can be, even with a bacteria versus a virus. I know what IgM antibodies are. I know what IgG antibodies are. I know enough about public health to know that if this is an emerging novel zoonotic virus, it's not going to get figured out in 2 months. And I refuse to be the canary in the coal mine. And I refuse to put in my opinion, my clients in that scenario. And I'm sure some of them, I've had some clients contact me and they're ready, they were ready to go. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. And this is why. The other issue that is really big for me, and it's been communicated in my groups as well as I was following a couple physicians, is the blood clotting issue. Mm-hmm. So blood clotting, thrombosis, microclots, those are contraindicated to massage therapy, period. And I typically screen people, and my clients will tell you, I had someone literally just 3 months ago, or 4 months, no, it was more than that, 4.5 months ago, who came in, who had a blood clot due to cancer treatment a year ago, I think it was. But she wasn't on heparin or any blood thinners, and I didn't feel comfortable working. And I let her know, you're going to need to talk with your doctor about this, and I'm going to need your doctor's okay. The issue with this virus is people can be asymptomatic. They're seeing young people that are asymptomatic coming in from strokes, from microclots that are traveling to their brain. They didn't have any other symptoms. They test positively for COVID. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be facilitating clots that are, you know, in a natural scenario, someone might have a clot, and if they have the time, they'll have the symptoms. They'll have, if it's a deep vein thrombosis in their leg, they'll have red hot, you know, skin, and you can see it, and there's pain, and sometimes there's time to get them to a physician. If you dislodge that clot in their leg, it's going to speed up that process much faster. And I'm just not willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
I'm not. So I shut down my time. So let's see, I closed 2/25. I wasn't working. 3 on March 12th, I officially suspended practice, like was not scheduling anyone in the future, was canceling people all the time. And as of May 18th, I completely closed. And I did move out of my space because I don't see working in the next few months, and I don't know how long it's going to be until I'm comfortable. So unfortunately, my dream, I was working at Fairwinds Wellness, which was my dream from the time in my business plan when I graduated in 2006 from BTI. I always said I wanted to work in an integrative wellness center. And it's been an amazing 9 months. I mean, I would just reach my stride. I mean, I was really doing well, had a really great client base, lots of regulars, just loving it. And so it's really hard. But I moved out last week, and so that's that for now. And part of the consideration too was I'm going to need a different space when I come back to it. I know I'm not going to be able to have a carpeted floor. I'm not going to feel comfortable with that. I'm going to want to be able to mop in between clients with bleach solution. I'm going to want a bigger room that has more air circulating because of the possibility. So yeah, it's been an interesting 3 months because literally I left on a Friday evening, cleaned up, closed my room, thought I was coming back the following Tuesday, and I couldn't go back. And I had no idea that last client on that Friday was going to be the last one I saw on that week.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been kind of eerie.
Yeah. Oh, that's so much to think about and consider.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. What do you think this entire crisis, how does it change our field? You give a global perspective, like what do you see it looking like when things I don't think they ever get back to, you know, once we find a new normal, what do you see as some of the big changes? We got more cats walking across. It's all good.
Changes. Well, I think it's going to be interesting. I really hope I'm wrong. Let me just state that.
Sure.
I hope that this virus, I hope that it is not as bad as I think it is. But I think it's bad. I wrote down the cases. And I think this is another issue, state to state. I think people out west have a much different feeling about it than we do in closer proximity to New York City. As of today, there are 44,424 cases of COVID in Maryland. In the last 24 hours, there were 893 new ones that were diagnosed. There's been 2,092 deaths as of this morning. And in the last 24 hours, 47 of those were deaths that just happened. Currently hospitalized, there's 1,329. And in the last 24 hours, there's been negative 45, which is good. So I think we were stabilized, but now we're going into Memorial Day. And my point in bringing that to light is I wonder how it's going to look differently state to state. Mm-hmm. And I think it's coloring people opening now versus waiting. And I think people that are out west, some of them have a different perception of safety in terms of this because of the numbers. I'm very interested to see how the people that open, how that all goes and whether hotspots are created.
Yeah.
I think that I'm wondering if contact tracing is going to continue. I wonder how that's going to integrate into practice for practitioners and if they're going to be more in touch with their local public health departments. I think there are going to be new relationships there. I think there's some good things that are going to happen. I think that we're going to have to be much more in contact with our state regulatory agencies and public health departments. And I think our governors and our local politicians are going to have to understand what massage is. I think it's going to give us the opportunity to really have a voice in bringing to light what massage therapy really is. I think it's going to change how much time, which a lot of people you've interviewed have spoken about. I always left at least a half an hour in between clients because I do a pretty involved intake and outtake, and I wanted that time to clean. That's going to have to stretch to an hour.
Yeah, for sure. For me too.
Yeah. And I think for me too, this is what was a deciding factor. There's some things I just am not willing to deal with right now. I'm not willing to deal with having a debate whether somebody should wear a mask or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not willing to have political debates while I'm trying to work in the treatment room. I think that if I had to work with a mask on all day long, I would literally self-combust because I run really warm anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I have issues with the fact that this work is extremely expansive work. For me, that's something that people describe in their bodies when they leave my treatment room. When I ask them, how do you feel? What's different? Tell me. And they'll say, I feel like there's just so much more space in my body, that between my joints and in my body. And I think, how am I going to create that type of environment and experience when we're feeling so constricted and we're having to wear masks and full PPE? I don't know how I would do that. And actually, I had to go to the doctor during this time. And the physician that I saw was completely robed in PPE. I will say this made an impression on me. I was upset because this is the first time I'd ever had to wear a mask at a doctor's office. I was freaked out. I really didn't want to be there during this time. But she came in to the treatment room and she looked at me and I had tears in my eyes and said, I'm sorry, but I haven't been out of the house in 4 or 5 weeks. And I don't want to be here. It's making me slightly scared. And it's just sad. It's just a different environment. But she touched me on the shoulder. She just touched me on the shoulder. And it did make an impression. I thought, okay, if I do go back to work and I have to be in full PPE at some point, that did make an impression. Like I could still feel her intent. So that's promising to me. But right now, I don't see a way forward. And when I try to imagine what it's like being in Star Trek, but not in a good way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. So much to think about, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experience and your history and about Maryland and everything. And in case anyone's feeling a little bit, challenged by our conversation, I'm going to reflect one of your own quotes back to you because I like what you wrote. Is that all right?
Sure.
Wellness is not about living in the perfect body or striking the perfect balance at every juncture in life. It is about resilience and awareness.
You found that on my Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, or somewhere on your bio. I do research around here.
You did. Well, thank you.
But,
and I really do believe that.
Yeah.
I do believe that.
Hope everyone out there can find some extra resilience and extra awareness. And I really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you interviewing me. This is very, very much an honor. And I guess I just want to leave it with this is about ethics. It's about ethics and boundaries. And I think our profession does a good job at a lot of the schools and in addressing these issues. But I think we still have a really long way to go with ethics. And the one thing I want to say, and I don't want to be judgmental, but every day as practitioners, we have to be in that room making ethical decisions on the fly with our clients. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. And I realize there's a lot of people out there, though, that are struggling. And I think with that struggle, it's important for us to reflect on what we do every day in our practice and how we can become stronger in understanding ethics. And whether you need 3 CEUs every 2 years or not, study ethics on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it on your own because you've got to practice it every day. So that's what I'll leave it with.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Everyone out there, find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate and review, and share this around. And I really appreciate it. Thanks.